The Great Hall on Nexus Prime was bigger than most cities. Crystal walls reached up so high that the top disappeared into mist. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved without sound. Today was the monthly meeting of the Galactic Council, just like every month for the past 40 years. Chancellor Veltara looked around the massive room. Her skin was like living crystal that changed colors when she moved. She had been leading these meetings for 15 years now. Everything looked normal today. The Corvan soldiers sat in their dark armor. The Miran traders wore their bright robes. The Thessian priests floated in their meditation poses. But something was different. Something was missing. Veltara's eyes stopped at Section 7, the human section. 12 empty chairs sat in perfect rows. No Ambassador Hyunwoo Park, no Dr. Sunmi Lee, no Captain Jae-ho Kim. Not a single human anywhere. Strange, Veltara thought. The humans are never late. She waited 5 more minutes, then 10. The other council members began to whisper among themselves. The Corvans made clicking sounds with their mouthparts. The Mirans flashed lights on their foreheads. The Thessians hummed in low tones. "Perhaps we should begin without them," said Admiral Thexnor from the Corvan section. His voice was like rocks grinding together. The humans probably overslept again. Several beings laughed. It was an old joke. Humans needed to sleep every day for 8 hours. Most other species thought this was very funny and weak. "Yes," said Merchant Prince Galan from the Miran section. "We have important trade matters to discuss. We cannot wait for the humans to figure out their calendars." More laughter filled the hall. Veltara nodded and started the meeting. She did not worry about the missing humans. They were the newest members of the council. They had joined only 37 years ago. That was very recent in galactic terms. The Corvans had been council members for over 3,000 years. Far away from Nexus Prime, Dr. Min-ho Choi was working in his laboratory. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, floated near a strange purple nebula. Min-ho was studying the gas clouds when his computer made a soft beeping sound. A new message had arrived. Min-ho opened it and read the words 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. Protocol 7. Return home. Tell no one. Min-ho felt his heart beat faster. Protocol 7 was something all humans knew about, but they never talked about it. Not even to each other. It was the emergency plan that every human hoped would never be used. Min-ho looked around his laboratory. He had been working here for 6 years. He had made friends with aliens from 12 different species. They would wonder where he went. They would ask questions, but the message was clear. Tell no one. Min-ho began packing his equipment. He moved quickly but carefully. Everything important had to come with him. Everything else had to look normal when he left. On the planet New Sol, Captain Ji-young Kim stood on the observation deck of the main control tower. Below her, the city stretched for hundreds of kilometers. 2 million humans lived here. It was the largest human settlement outside of Earth's solar system. Ji-young's wrist computer buzzed. The message was short. Protocol 7. Return home. Tell no one. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had been the planetary administrator for 8 years. She loved this world. The purple grass moved in the wind like ocean waves. The 3 moons made beautiful patterns in the sky at night, but Protocol 7 meant leaving. All of them. Right now, Ji-young opened her communication system and sent coded messages to every department head on New Sol. The messages looked like normal work orders. Schedule changes, equipment maintenance, supply deliveries. But every human who received a message understood what it really meant. It was time to go home. Dr. So-young Bae was working deep underground on the Thessian temple world of Morthanis. She maintained the environmental systems that kept the ancient cities working. The Thessians were proud of their old technology, but it needed constant care to keep running. Her communication device flashed with the Protocol 7 message. So-young looked around the massive machine room. Thousands of pipes and cables ran through the walls like metal veins. Without her daily maintenance, the air recyclers would start failing in a few days. She gathered her tools and personal belongings. Then she did something that felt wrong but was part of Protocol 7. She activated all the automatic systems and set them to run for exactly 72 hours. After that, they would need human hands to keep working. The Thessians would not notice anything wrong for 3 days. By then, So-young would be far away. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on 73 different worlds. Human doctors stopped in the middle of surgery and handed their work to alien assistants. Human engineers left their posts at power plants and space stations. Human teachers walked out of classrooms full of alien children. Some humans cried as they left. They had built lives in these places. They had alien friends who would not understand. But Protocol 7 was absolute. Every human knew that if it was ever activated, it meant humanity's survival was at risk. The departure was perfect. Too perfect for coincidence. Every human ship lifted off within hours of each other. Every human facility went to automatic mode at exactly the right time. Every human worker left their post with a smile and a wave, saying they would be back tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and no humans returned. Station Keeper Wansik Park sealed the last human outpost in the asteroid belt of the Deltari system. The mining operation had been running for 12 years. It provided rare metals to 6 different alien civilizations. The alien workers would arrive for their shift in 6 hours. Wansik looked back at the control room one last time. Everything was clean and organized. The automatic systems would keep the station running for a while. But without human supervision, small problems would become big problems very quickly. He climbed into his small ship and started the engines. The jump drive was already programmed with coordinates that only humans knew. As his ship disappeared into hyperspace, Wansik wondered if he would ever see this place again. Back on Nexus Prime, the council meeting was ending. Chancellor Veltara made a note about the missing humans. She would send them a message later asking why they had not attended. There would probably be some simple explanation. As the other council members filed out of the Great Hall, none of them realized that this was the last meeting that would ever go smoothly. The humans were gone and everything was about to change. 3 weeks had passed since the council meeting. 3 weeks since anyone had seen a human anywhere in the galaxy. At first, most aliens thought it was just a strange coincidence. Humans were always doing odd things that other species did not understand. Admiral Thexnor stood in the command center of his warship, the Iron Fang. Red warning lights flashed all around him. His communications officer, a young Corvan named Grixtal, held a datapad with shaking hands. "Admiral," Grixtal said, "the ammunition factories on Corver Prime have gone silent. No one is answering our calls." Thexnor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Send a team to investigate. Those factories must keep running. We are at war with the Thessians. We need weapons." But when the investigation team arrived at the factories, they found something impossible to understand. The massive buildings were completely empty of workers. Machines still hummed and moved, making bullets and plasma charges. But the control rooms were abandoned. "Where are the supervisors?" asked Captain Zeknor as he walked through the silent halls. "Where are the quality inspectors? Where are the system managers?" His team found their answer in the personnel files. Every single supervisor, inspector, and manager had been human. The Corvans had hired humans to run their weapons factories because humans were good at organizing complex operations. It had seemed like a smart business decision. Now those factories were running on automatic systems that would only work for a few more days. After that, the machines would break down. The quality would get worse. Soon, the Corvan military would have no ammunition at all. Thexnor stared at the reports from 17 different factory worlds. The same story everywhere. Humans gone, production failing. His mighty war fleet was slowly running out of things to shoot. "How did this happen?" he asked his intelligence officer. "How did those soft mammals become so important to our military?" The intelligence officer, a scarred veteran named Vorthak, looked uncomfortable. "Admiral, the humans were cheap to hire. They worked hard. They never complained. We thought we were using them. And now I think maybe they were using us." On the other side of the galaxy, Merchant Prince Golan was having his own crisis. His beautiful office on Moran Prime looked out over a spaceport that should have been busy with thousands of ships. Instead, only a few dozen vessels sat on the landing pads. Most of them were not moving. Golan's assistant, a young Moran named Pelix, rushed into the office with more bad news. "Your Excellency, the Vegan trade route has been closed. 3 ships got lost in hyperspace. The Centauri shipping lane is backed up because no one knows the new schedule. The cargo manifest systems are not working properly." Golan felt his head tentacles twist with stress. "What about the navigation computers? Can we not calculate our own jump coordinates?" "We tried, Your Excellency, but the calculations take our computers 3 days to complete. The humans could do the same work in 3 hours. That was the problem. For decades, the Moran Confederacy had hired human navigation specialists to plan their trade routes. Humans had strange brains that could process complex mathematical problems very quickly. They could calculate hyperspace jumps that took Moran computers days to figure out. The Morans had thought they were being clever. Why waste time and computer power when humans could do the work faster and cheaper? Now their entire trade network was falling apart, because no one else could replace what the humans had been doing. How long until our economy collapses? Golan asked. Pelix checked his datapad. If we cannot restore the trade routes within 2 months, most of our member worlds will declare independence. The Confederacy will break apart. Golan looked out at the nearly empty spaceport. Somewhere out there, human navigation specialists were probably calculating jump routes for someone else, but not for the Mirans. Not anymore. Deep in the sacred temples of Morthanis, Priestess Yelandra felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. The ancient atmospheric processors that had worked perfectly for 3,000 years were making strange noises. Temperature readings were fluctuating. Air pressure was dropping in some sections of the temple city. Summon the maintenance engineer, she told her assistant. Priestess, the assistant said nervously. The maintenance engineer was the human, So Young Bae. She has not reported for duty in 3 weeks. Yelandra felt her meditation calm shatter. Then summon the backup engineer. There is no backup engineer, Priestess. So Young Bae was the only one who understood the systems. This was impossible. The Thessians were the oldest and wisest species in the galaxy. Their technology was ancient and perfect. How could they depend on a young human female to keep their most sacred worlds livable? But as Yelandra investigated further, the truth became clear. Over the years, So Young had not just maintained the old Thessian systems. She had quietly improved them. She had replaced failing components with better human-designed alternatives. She had upgraded software and rewired control circuits. The Thessians had been so proud of their ancient technology that they never learned how their own systems actually worked anymore. They had let a human do all the technical work while they focused on meditation and philosophy. Now their temple worlds were slowly dying, and they had no idea how to save them. Chancellor Veltara sat in her private office reading reports from across the galaxy. Each report was worse than the last. The Corvins were running out of ammunition. The Morans were losing their trade routes. The Thessians were evacuating temple worlds, and everywhere the same explanation. Missing humans, how is this possible? She asked her intelligence chief, a Zelthanian named Corthan. Humans are the weakest species in the council. They have been members for less than 40 years. How could they be so important to our operations? Corthan's crystalline face showed embarrassment. Chancellor, we have been investigating this question. The answer is uncomplicated. Explain. Humans are good at things that we consider unimportant. They organize. They maintain. They solve small problems before they become big problems. We hired them to do jobs that we thought were beneath us. Veltara felt anger building in her chest. Jobs like what? Like maintaining our computer networks, managing our supply chains, coordinating between different departments, keeping detailed records, troubleshooting equipment failures. Those are not important jobs. We thought they were not important jobs, Chancellor. But it appears that these small jobs were holding our civilization together. Veltara activated her personal communication system and tried to send a message to Ambassador Hyunwoo Park. The system returned an error message. Recipient not found. She tried to contact the human embassy on Nexus Prime. Another error message. Address does not exist. She tried to reach Earth itself. The communication went through, but no one answered. Earth's communication satellites were working perfectly, but no human voices responded to her calls. Where did they go? She whispered. Corthan checked his datapad. Our deep space sensors show no signs of human ships anywhere in known space. No hyperspace signatures, no energy readings. It is as if 2 billion humans simply vanished. That is impossible. Yes, Chancellor. But impossible or not, it happened. Veltara stood and walked to her window. Outside, the great city of Nexus Prime sparkled with millions of lights. Ships came and went from the spaceport. Life continued as normal, but she knew that everything was starting to fall apart. The humans had been invisible threads holding the galaxy together. Now those threads were cut and the council was beginning to unravel. The worst part was that no one had seen it coming. The humans had seemed so harmless, so eager to please, so grateful to be included in galactic civilization. But maybe that had been an act. Maybe the humans had been planning this departure for years. Maybe they had been studying the other species, learning their weaknesses, making themselves necessary. Veltara shivered despite the warm air in her office. If the humans had been that clever, what else might they have been planning? The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. For the first time in 3,000 years, all member species had agreed to work together on a single mission. They had to find the humans. Chancellor Veltara stood before the assembled delegates in the Great Crystal Hall. Her usually calm voice carried notes of desperation. "The situation is critical," she announced. "Our civilizations are failing without human support. We must locate them immediately and negotiate their return." Captain Vexillar of the Corvan Dominion stepped forward. His black armor was covered with medals from countless battles. "My fleet stands ready to search every system in known space. We will find these humans and bring them back." Merchant Prince Golan raised one of his tentacles. "The Moran Confederacy offers our fastest scout ships. Our trade vessels know every hyperspace route. We can cover more ground than anyone." Priestess Yelandra spoke in her whispering voice. "The Thessian Order will provide our seeker ships. Our meditation techniques can detect life signs across vast distances." Intelligence Chief Corthan activated a holographic star map in the center of the hall. "We have identified 73 systems where humans maintained significant operations. We will search each one systematically." The largest search operation in galactic history began within hours. Mixed fleets of ships from all 4 major species spread out across the galaxy. They followed every known human trade route. They visited every planet where humans had established colonies or research stations. Captain Vexlar commanded the search of the Outer Rim territories. His warship, the Star Crusher, approached the mining colony of New Titan. This had been one of the first human settlements outside Earth's solar system. "Energy readings?" Vexlar asked his sensor operator. "Full power, Captain. All systems operational. No signs of damage or attack." The Star Crusher docked with the colony's main station. Vexlar led a boarding party through the airlocks. What they found made no sense. The colony was perfect. Clean hallways stretched in all directions. Computer screens showed normal readings. The air was fresh and warm, but there were no people anywhere. "Check the living quarters," Vexillar ordered his troops. They found personal belongings left behind, family photos on desks, half-eaten meals in refrigeration units, children's toys scattered on floors, but no humans. "Captain," called Sergeant Crickstall from the control room. "The computer logs show normal operations until 3 weeks ago. Then suddenly all human biosignatures disappear from the sensors." "What about the automatic systems?" "Running perfectly, sir. Better than perfectly, actually. It looks like someone programmed them to handle every possible situation." Vexlar studied the computer displays. The colony was managing itself with incredible efficiency. Power distribution was optimized. Life support was running at peak performance. Even the recreational facilities were maintaining themselves. "How long can it run like this?" "According to these projections, sir, approximately 6 months. After that, the systems will need direct maintenance." 6 months. The humans had planned for their automated systems to run for exactly 6 months without any help. That was not a coincidence. That was careful planning. Meanwhile, Scout Commander Taman O's former exploration routes were being investigated by a Miran science vessel called the Bright Horizon. Commander Yellick studied the navigation records that Taman had filed over the past 5 years. He found 17 new systems, Yellick told his crew, systems with habitable worlds that we never knew existed. They jumped to the first system on Taman's list. It contained a beautiful blue-green world with 2 moons. Orbital sensors showed signs of recent construction on the surface. "Landing platforms," reported the sensor operator. "Cleared areas for buildings. Fresh excavation sites. But no structures. No people. They landed and explored on foot. The evidence was clear. Humans had been building something here. Large something. But they had removed all traces of their work before leaving." "Look at this," called Science Officer Plexen from a hillside. "The ground has been leveled in a perfect rectangle. 5 kilometers by 2 kilometers. That is the exact size of a major industrial complex." "But there is nothing here," Yellick said. "Exactly. They built something, then took it apart and removed every piece. Even the foundation materials are gone." System after system told the same story. Human outposts that had been carefully dismantled. Research stations that had been emptied of all equipment. Mining operations where valuable machinery had been removed with surgical precision. The humans had not fled in panic. They had evacuated according to a detailed plan that must have taken years to develop. Dr. Yunji Nam's research station near the Vale Nebula was investigated by a joint Thessian-Zelthanian science team. The station was still there, still operational, still conducting experiments. Fascinating, whispered Priestess Morthana as she examined the laboratory equipment. These experiments are studying dimensional physics, theoretical work that our best scientists struggle to understand. The station's computers were running complex calculations, models of space-time distortion, mathematical equations that described the structure of reality itself, but no humans were present to explain what any of it meant. The experiments are still running, reported the Zelthanian physicist, Dr. Korthal. The computers are following protocols that we cannot interpret. It is as if they are conducting research that we are not qualified to understand. Morthana felt a chill of realization. What if the humans were not just more advanced than we thought? What if they were much more advanced? The search teams made another disturbing discovery. Human communication networks were still active throughout the galaxy. Quantum entanglement communicators that the humans had installed were carrying messages to unknown destinations. Intelligence teams tried to intercept these messages. They failed. The encryption was beyond anything they had seen before. The quantum signatures were impossible to trace. They built a completely separate communication system, reported Korthan to Chancellor Veltara. We thought we were monitoring their communications, but they were using channels that we never detected. How is that possible? By building their network inside our network. Every human communication device had hidden functions that we never discovered. They were talking to each other right under our sensors, and we never knew. The implications were staggering. For 37 years, humans had maintained secret communications across the entire galaxy. They had coordinated activities that the Council never suspected. They had planned and prepared while appearing to be simple, harmless workers. Captain Jinne Park's former patrol routes were being searched by a combined fleet of all 4 species. They found human early warning stations scattered throughout the border regions, stations that had been monitoring alien military movements for decades. These sensors are incredibly sophisticated, Admiral Thexnor admitted grudgingly. They can detect ship movements from 50 light-years away. We thought they were just communication relays, but the stations were more than just sensors. They contained detailed files on every alien military unit in the galaxy. Fleet compositions, weapon capabilities, tactical preferences, psychological profiles of commanding officers. The humans had been watching everyone, learning everything. Building a complete intelligence picture of galactic civilization. They knew everything about us, Thexnor realized. Our strengths, our weaknesses, our plans, our secrets. The search continued for months, but the conclusion became increasingly clear. The humans had not fled. They had executed a planned withdrawal that had been prepared for decades. Every detail had been considered. Every contingency had been planned for. They had left behind a galaxy that was dependent on their services, but had no idea how those services actually worked. They had taken their knowledge, their skills, and their technology to some unknown destination. Most importantly, they had left behind a message that the aliens were only beginning to understand. The message was not written in words. It was written in the collapse of everything the humans had been quietly maintaining. The Galactic Council was learning exactly how much they had depended on the species they had considered least important. And they were learning it the hard way. 6 months after the humans disappeared, the galaxy was falling apart. Admiral Thexnor stood in the ruins of what had once been the Corvin Empire's greatest military base. Smoke rose from destroyed buildings. The smell of death hung in the air like a thick blanket. His mighty army was losing the war against the Thessians and losing badly. "Report," he ordered his communications officer. "Admiral, the 3rd Fleet has retreated from the Altair system. The 7th Fleet is trapped in the Vega Nebula. Our ammunition supplies are at 8% of normal levels." Thexnor closed his 4 eyes and tried to control his anger. For 3,000 years, the Corvin military had been the strongest force in the galaxy. They had won every major war. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. Now they were being beaten by the Thessians, who had always been peaceful, meditation-focused mystics. "How are the Thessians managing to fight so well?" Thexnor asked. "They were never warriors." His intelligence officer, Vorthak, looked uncomfortable. "Admiral, we have captured some of their equipment. Their weapons are different from what they used before. Different how? They appear to be using biological weapons, sir. Diseases that target Corvin physiology specifically. Our medical teams cannot develop treatments fast enough. Thexnor felt his blood turn cold. The Thessians had always refused to use biological weapons, claiming they violated their spiritual beliefs. Something had changed. What had changed was desperation. On the Thessian temple world of Vorthanis, Priestess Yelandra knelt before the Council of Elders. The great meditation chamber was darker than usual because half the life support systems had failed. "Honored elders," she said, 17 more temple worlds have been evacuated. The atmospheric processors are failing faster than we can repair them. Elder Sotheron's voice was weak with age and exhaustion. What news from the search for alternative maintenance personnel? None of the other species can understand our systems, Elder. The technology integration that the human, So Young Bae performed was unique. She connected our ancient systems with modern improvements in ways that our own engineers cannot replicate. Then, we must end this war quickly, Elder Sotheron decided, before we lose our holy worlds forever. But Elder, our military forces are insufficient to defeat the Corvins in conventional battle. Then, we will not fight conventionally. That decision led to the deployment of biological weapons that the Thessians had developed in secret laboratories for centuries but never used. They had kept them as a last resort, hoping never to break their spiritual vows. But losing their temple worlds was worse than breaking their vows. The biological attacks devastated the Corvin military. Entire fleets became infected. Soldiers died in agony as their bodies fought diseases designed specifically to kill their species. The proud Corvin warriors who had always believed in honorable combat found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see or defeat. Meanwhile, the Miran Confederacy was dissolving in economic chaos. Merchant Prince Galon sat in his office on Miran Prime, watching news reports of civil wars breaking out across Miran space. "Your Excellency," his assistant Pelix reported, "the outer colonies have declared independence. They claim we can no longer provide adequate trade support. What about the core worlds? 3 of them have formed their own alliance. They are establishing trade agreements directly with the Zelthanians, bypassing our authority completely." Golan felt his tentacles writhe with stress. The Miran Confederacy had been built on the promise of profitable trade for all member worlds. When that trade collapsed, the political structure collapsed with it. How did we become so dependent on human navigators? He asked himself for the 1,000th time. The answer was simple but painful. Human brains were uniquely suited to complex mathematical calculations. They could process the multidimensional equations needed for safe hyperspace travel in ways that other species could not match. Without human navigators, Miran trade ships were getting lost in hyperspace, arriving weeks late or not arriving at all. Trade agreements were failing. Supply chains were broken. Member worlds were finding new partners who could actually deliver goods on time. President Haywan Park had been the human trade coordinator who had spent 15 years building relationships between different Miran factions. She had mediated disputes, negotiated compromises, and kept competing interests working together. Without her quiet diplomatic work, old grudges were resurging. The Outer Rim traders remembered their grievances against the core world merchants. The mining guilds renewed their conflicts with the shipping cartels. The Confederacy split into 3 competing factions, each claiming to be the legitimate government. The Zelthanian Empire was facing its own crisis. Chancellor Veltara sat in her crystal tower, reading intelligence reports that made no sense. "Our spy networks are reporting contradictory information," Intelligence Chief Corthan explained. "Half our agents believe the Corvins are winning the war. The other half believe the Thessians are winning. Some report that both sides are using weapons we have never seen before. How is this possible? Our intelligence network is the best in the galaxy. It was the best when we had human data analysts, Chancellor. They could process enormous amounts of information and identify patterns that we miss. Without them, we are confused." Veltara felt fear growing in her chest. The Zelthanians had always survived by knowing everything that happened in the galaxy, before anyone else knew they knew. Their crystal-based brains could store vast amounts of information, but they needed help organizing and analyzing that information. Humans had provided that help. Human analysts like Dr. Junho Nam had spent years teaching Zelthanian computers how to process intelligence data more efficiently. They had created analysis protocols that could identify threats and opportunities faster than any other species could manage. Now, those protocols were failing. The computers were producing reports, but the reports contradicted each other. Without human insight to guide the analysis, the Zelthanian intelligence system was becoming unreliable. Chancellor, Corthan continued, there is another problem. Our agents are reporting that both the Corvins and Thessians suspect us of supporting their enemies. Why would they think that? Because our intelligence gathering appears hostile to both sides. When we cannot analyze the information properly, our questions seem suspicious. Both factions believe we are spying for the other side. This was a disaster. The Zelthanians had maintained their position by staying neutral and selling information to all sides. If both the Corvins and Thessians decided that the Zelthanians were enemies, the Crystal Empire would be crushed between them. Chancellor Veltara made a decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. She ordered all Zelthanian spy operations to shut down. The empire that had survived for 5,000 years by knowing everyone else's secrets was now blind and frightened. The economic chaos was spreading beyond the major powers. Smaller species that had depended on the Galactic Council for stability were making their own desperate alliances. The Antaran Republic signed a mutual defense pact with the Corvin Dominion, hoping for protection from Thessian biological weapons. The Centauri Federation allied with the Thessians, seeking spiritual guidance in chaotic times. The Vegan colonies declared neutrality and closed their borders to all outside contact. Most disturbing of all, some species were simply disappearing. The Deltari, who had worked closely with humans on asteroid mining operations, had withdrawn to their home system and cut off all communications. The Altarians had abandoned their trade stations and retreated to hidden colonies. It was as if the humans' departure had given other species permission to leave as well. Dr. Sang-Ho Lee had been the human xenopsychologist who studied interspecies relationships for the Council. His research had predicted many of these problems years earlier. In his classified reports, he had warned that the Galactic Council was not actually a unified government, but a collection of competing factions held together by mutual economic dependence. Those reports had been filed away and ignored. The alien leaders had assumed that their political system was stable because it had lasted for thousands of years. But stability and strength were not the same thing. The Council had been stable because humans had been quietly managing the conflicts between different species. They had mediated disputes, facilitated trade, and prevented small problems from becoming big problems now. Those small problems were becoming civilization-ending disasters. Admiral Thexanor received the final blow while his medical teams were still treating soldiers poisoned by Thessian biological weapons. A coded message arrived from Corvin High Command. Admiral, we are suspending all military operations. Our weapons factories have completely shut down. We have no ammunition, no replacement parts, and no way to manufacture new equipment. The war is over. Over? We surrender to the Thessians. We have no choice. For the first time in 3,000 years, the mighty Corvin Dominion had been defeated in war, not by superior tactics or better weapons, but by the simple fact that they could no longer maintain their military without human support. As news of the Corvin surrender spread, Chancellor Veltara realized that the galaxy she had known for her entire life was dead. The Galactic Council was nothing but empty chairs and broken promises. 1 year after the humans disappeared, the galaxy had become a place that no one recognized. The Corvin Dominion existed only on paper. Their military was destroyed. Their weapons factories stood empty. Admiral Thexanor commanded a fleet of ships that could not fight, and soldiers who were dying of diseases they could not cure. The Thessian Order had won their war, but at the cost of their souls. Their holy temple worlds were dying one by one as ancient life support systems failed. Priestess Yelyandra spent her days evacuating sacred sites that had been maintained for thousands of years. The Moran Confederacy had split into 7 different factions, each claiming to be the rightful government. Trade wars raged between competing merchant groups. Former allies had become bitter enemies fighting over scraps of their once great commercial empire. The Zelthanian Empire had closed its borders and retreated into isolation. Chancellor Veltara ruled over a civilization that was afraid to interact with anyone else. paralyzed by their inability to understand what was happening in the galaxy around them. And in the center of it all, the great crystal halls of Nexus Prime stood empty. The Galactic Council had not met in 8 months. There was nothing left to discuss. Then, on the anniversary of humanity's departure, every communication device in the galaxy activated at the same time. Chancellor Veltara was alone in her private office when her personal communicator began broadcasting without her permission. She tried to turn it off, but the controls would not respond. The screen flickered and then showed the face of a human she recognized. Director Sung Ho Kang had been humanity's cultural attaché to the Galactic Council. Most aliens had considered his position unimportant. He organized cultural exchange programs and managed diplomatic ceremonies. Nothing that seemed to matter in the grand scheme of galactic politics. But now his calm professional face filled every screen in Zelthanian space. And judging by the emergency communications flooding in from other species, his face was appearing everywhere else as well. "People of the former Galactic Council," he began, his voice carrying clearly through speakers that should not have been responding to outside signals. "You are probably wondering where we went and why we left without explanation. The answer is simple. We discovered what you really thought of us." The transmission continued, and Veltara felt her crystal skin grow cold as Director Kang displayed recordings that should not have existed. Private conversations between council members, classified military communications, secret diplomatic messages, useful servants. Read one quote from Admiral Thexnor: "The humans work hard and ask for little. Perfect for handling tasks beneath Corvan dignity. Primitive but industrious," said a recording of Merchant Prince Gallen. "We can use their mathematical abilities until we develop better computers." "Temporary inconveniences," came the voice of Elder Sotharan. "When they outlive their usefulness, we will guide them to more appropriate roles in galactic society." Veltara's own voice played next, from a conversation she barely remembered having 2 years earlier. "The humans are eager to please. They seem grateful just to be included. We can manage them easily." Director Kang paused to let the words sink in. Then he spoke again. "You believed you were managing us, but we were managing you. Every critical system you entrusted to us contained safeguards. Every trade route we facilitated had backup paths you never knew about. Every conflict we mediated had prepared solutions for when you inevitably turned on each other." The image changed to show Admiral Hyan-Soo Park, humanity's military commander. Veltara had met him many times and always thought he seemed modest and deferential. Now his expression was confident and coldly professional. "Your military effectiveness has decreased by 97% since our departure," Admiral Park reported. "This was expected. We designed your weapon systems with built-in dependencies that only human technicians could maintain long-term. We did this not out of malice, but out of necessity." Necessity? Every species in the Council has attempted to conquer or control other species at some point in their history. We could not allow you to become too powerful. We needed safeguards to protect ourselves and others from your ambitions. The transmission shifted again. Dr. Yejin Choi appeared, identified as humanity's chief xenopsychologist. She had studied at the prestigious Thessian Academy of Mental Sciences.
Many aliens had taught her about their cultures and thought processes. "We spent 40 years studying you," Dr. Choi explained.
"Learning your weaknesses, your dependencies, your inevitable patterns of behavior. You saw us as junior partners in your great galactic civilization. We saw you as subjects in the largest behavioral study in history. The Corvans always resort to biological warfare when conventional weapons fail. We predicted this and ensured that the Thessians would be prepared with appropriate countermeasures. The Mirans fracture into competing factions whenever their trade networks are disrupted. We predicted this and established alternative economic structures that do not depend on centralized control. The Thessians abandon their principles when their holy sites are threatened. We predicted this and documented their weapons research for future reference. The Zelthanians become paranoid and isolationist when their information networks fail. We predicted this and prepared accordingly." Veltara realized with growing horror that every crisis of the past year had been foreseen. The humans had not just predicted the collapse of galactic civilization, they had planned for it. Director Kang returned to the screen. Behind him, Veltara could see glimpses of a vast space station, unlike anything she had ever seen. Human engineers moved between machines that seemed decades ahead of anything the Council species possessed. We have been preparing for this departure for 37 years, Director Kang continued. Hidden colonies in distant galaxies, self-sufficient industrial bases, a complete technological infrastructure that never depended on alien cooperation. But Director, came an off-screen voice that sounded like a council member.
Why did you help us for so long if you always planned to leave?
Director Kang's expression softened slightly. Because we hoped you would change. We hoped that working together would teach all of us to be better. We tried to show you that cooperation was stronger than domination. We tried to demonstrate that the smallest species could make the greatest contributions. We failed. You never saw us as equals. You saw us as tools. The transmission showed star charts that made Veltara's head spin. Dozens of solar systems in other galaxies. Habitable worlds with human colonies that had been established decades ago. Industrial complexes that could support billions of people. You are probably wondering how we managed to build all of this without your knowledge, Admiral Park said. The answer is that we used the same skills that made us valuable to you. Organization, planning, attention to detail. We are very good at managing complex projects. We are also very good at keeping secrets. The most devastating revelation came last. Director Kang displayed a list of species that had requested to join humanity's new confederation. The list was long and growing. 127 inhabited systems in nearby galaxies have asked to become part of our alliance, he announced. Species that were tired of council politics. Civilizations that wanted partners instead of masters. Cultures that believed cooperation was better than competition. We are no longer alone in the galaxy. We have found others who share our values. As the transmission neared its end, Director Kang's expression became almost sad. We wish you well in the civilization you built for yourselves. We hope you will learn from what has happened. We hope you will become the wise and peaceful species you always claimed to be. But we will not be returning to help you. You must solve your problems yourselves now. Goodbye. The transmission ended, leaving Chancellor Veltara alone in her dark office. Around her, the Zelthanian Empire was probably in chaos as citizens realized the full extent of their dependence on the missing humans. But Veltara was thinking about something else. She was remembering a conversation from 3 years earlier. She had been complaining to Intelligence Chief Corthan about the humans' tendency to ask detailed questions about Council operations. They want to understand everything, she had said. Why do they need to know how our governments work? Why do they study our military systems? Why do they analyze our economic structures? Corthan had shrugged. Perhaps they are just curious. Humans seem to enjoy learning about other species. Now Veltara understood. The humans had not been curious. They had been preparing. Every question they asked had been part of a comprehensive analysis of galactic civilization. Every detail they learned had been used to plan for this moment. They had studied the Council species the way scientists study laboratory animals. And when the experiment was complete, they had simply left. Outside her window, the lights of Nexus Prime flickered in the darkness. Some of them were going out permanently as power systems failed. Others flashed in random patterns as automated controls lost their programming. The great galactic civilization that had lasted for thousands of years was dying. And its death had been planned and predicted by the species everyone had thought was least important. Chancellor Veltara sat alone in the ruins of everything she had believed about the galaxy. For the first time in her long life,